The ambulance lights were still flashing when Marcus checked his bank account. Negative $312. The overdraft fees from his daughter's emergency room visit had triggered a cascade of financial destruction that would take him from middle-class comfort to the edge of homelessness in just 70-2 hours. But what Marcus discovered during those 3 days would completely transform not just his finances, but his entire understanding of how wealthy people really think about money. Before I share what happened to Marcus, I need to be clear, this is educational content based on his experience, not personal financial advice for your unique situation. What worked for Marcus might not work exactly the same for you, so please do your own research and consult with qualified professionals. I'm not a licensed financial advisor, and your situation is unique to you. Marcus was 40-1 years old, a project manager at a construction company in Cleveland, making $60-8,000 a year. Divorced father of 2. Decent credit score. Some retirement savings. The kind of guy who thought he was doing okay until that Tuesday night when his 14-year-old daughter Emma collapsed during basketball practice. The hospital bills started arriving 3 weeks later. Even with insurance, Marcus owed $11,400. He'd already drained his emergency fund for lawyer fees during the divorce. His credit cards were near their limits. And that's when the first domino fell, an automatic payment bounced, triggering a $30-5 overdraft fee. Then another. Then another. By Friday morning, Marcus was sitting in his truck outside the construction site, too ashamed to go inside. 7 overdraft fees had eaten $240-5. His rent check had bounced. His ex-wife was calling about missing child support. His boss had already warned him about his distracted performance. Everything was falling apart. That's when Carlos walked up and knocked on his window. Carlos was the night janitor at the construction company. 60-3 years old, always wore the same faded work shirt. Drove a 20-year-old Honda Civic. Marcus had barely noticed him before, just another invisible person cleaning up after everyone else. But Carlos had noticed Marcus sitting in his truck for the past hour. "You okay, brother?" Carlos asked through the window. Marcus tried to lie, say everything was fine. But something about Carlos's eyes, kind, knowing, patient made the truth spill out. The medical bills. The overdrafts. The shame of not being able to provide for his kids. The fear that he was about to lose everything. Carlos listened without judgment. Then he said something that made Marcus's blood run cold. "I used to be exactly where you are. Worse, actually. Lost my house, my family, everything. Slept in this parking lot for 3 months." Marcus stared at the older man. Carlos, the janitor. Living in a parking lot? But that was 15 years ago, Carlos continued. Today, I own 4 rental properties, have $800,000 in investments, and I'm retiring next year. Still clean these offices, though. Keeps me humble. Plus, I like the night shift, gives me time to manage my real business stuff. Before we go further, you need to know this, what Carlos was about to reveal goes against everything Marcus had been taught about building wealth. Everything his parents told him, everything his financial advisor recommended, everything he'd read in those personal finance books. And that's exactly why it worked. "Can I buy you coffee?" Carlos asked. There's something you need to understand about money that 90% of people will never figure out. The other 10%. They're the ones getting rich while everyone else stays broke. An hour later, Marcus was sitting in a 20- for our diner, his untouched coffee glowing cold as Carlos drew diagrams on napkins. But Carlos didn't start with investment strategies or budgeting tips. He started with a question that changed everything. "Marcus, why do you think I still work as a janitor when I have $800,000 invested?" Marcus fumbled for an answer. Maybe Carlos liked the work? Needed the health insurance? Was bored in retirement? Carlos shook his head. "I keep this job because it makes me invisible. And invisible people learn things that visible people never discover. Every night, I clean the offices of lawyers, accountants, financial advisors. I see their client files in the trash. I overhear their phone calls. I watch how they really make their money versus what they tell their clients." Here's where Marcus's story takes an unexpected turn. Carlos didn't give him money. Didn't offer a loan. Instead, he pulled out a worn notebook filled with observations he'd made over 15 years of being invisible in wealthy people's offices. Page 1, Carlos said, opening the notebook. "The wealth transfer system. Every financial professional I clean up after uses it, but none of them teach it to their clients." Marcus leaned in, desperate for answers. His phone kept buzzing minus bill collectors, his ex-wife, his boss. But something in Carlos's voice made him ignore everything else. "Wealthy people don't think about money the way you do," Carlos explained. "You think about money as something you earn, save, and spend. They think about money as a system of energy that needs to flow in specific patterns. Miss the pattern, stay poor forever. Understand the pattern, build wealth automatically." The first pattern Carlos revealed made Marcus feel sick to his stomach. It was about debt minus, but not the way Dave Ramsey or Suze Orman talk about it. "Your overdraft fees," Carlos said, pointing to Marcus's phone showing his negative bank balance. "You see them as punishment for being poor. But watch this." He pulled up something on his own phone minus a business credit line statement showing available credit of $200,000 at 3.9% interest. "Same bank that's charging you $30 minus $5 for being $3 short gave me $200,000 at almost no interest. Why? Because I understand the game. You're playing checkers while they're playing chess. But wait, minus, there's something I haven't told you yet about Carlos's past. Something that makes his transformation even more incredible. 15 years ago, Carlos wasn't just broke. He was running from something. Someone. And the skills he learned while hiding would become the foundation of his wealth minus building system. I need to tell you why I really became invisible, Carlos said, his voice dropping. 2008 financial crisis. I was a mortgage broker. Not one of the good ones. I sold supreme loans to people who couldn't afford them, made huge commissions, lived like a king. Then it all crashed. Lost everything. But worse than that minus, I had angry clients looking for me. People who'd lost their homes because of loans I'd sold them. Marcus felt his coffee turn cold in his stomach. Was he taking advice from a criminal? I'm not proud of it, Carlos continued. But hiding taught me something. When you're invisible, you see how the system really works. You see the same banks that destroyed people's lives get bailed out while families sleep in cars. You see financial advisors selling products they know are garbage because the commissions are higher. You see the game behind the game. This is where most people would have walked away. But Marcus was desperate. His phone showed 17 missed calls. His daughter needed him to be strong to figure this out. So he kept listening. The first rule of the wealth transfer system, Carlos said, drawing a circle on a napkin, is that money doesn't disappear. It just moves. Your overdraft fees don't vanish minus they become someone else's profit. Your high minus interest debt payments don't evaporate minus they fund someone else's yacht. The question is, are you the sender or the receiver? Carlos drew arrows showing money flowing from the circle. Right now you're sending. Every month, money flows from you to banks, credit card companies, service providers. They've designed the system to keep you sending forever. But there's a way to reverse the flow. If you're dealing with this same situation, type YES in the comments. The number of people trapped in this invisible prison is staggering, and you're not alone. Carlos pulled out his phone and showed Marcus something that made his hands shake. It was a spreadsheet showing Carlos's monthly income. But it wasn't from a job or traditional investments. It was from something Carlos called invisible assets. 40 minus $200 from asset 1. 30 minus $800 from asset 2. 20 minus $900 from asset 3. The list went on. Total monthly passive income, 30 minus $1,000. These aren't rental properties, Marcus asked, confused. Some are. But most are invisible assets. Things that generate money but don't appear wealthy. Things that fly under the radar. Things that compound while everyone else is distracted by shiny objects. Here's where Carlos's story connects to a bigger truth about wealth in America. While Marcus had been following conventional advice, minus max out your 401k, pay off debt, save 10% minus, Carlos had discovered what the truly wealthy do. And it has nothing to do with the advice given to the middle class. Let me show you something, Carlos said, pulling up a photo on his phone. It was a parking lot. See that strip mall? I own the parking lot. Not the buildings minus, just the asphalt they sit on. Bought it 5 years ago for 40 minus $2,000. The businesses pay me rent for parking. 30 minus $200 every month, like clockwork. No maintenance, no tenants to manage. No one even knows I own it. Marcus stared at the photo. It looked like any suburban parking lot. Nothing special. Nothing that screamed wealth. That's the point, Carlos said. Invisible assets. The wealthy buy cash flow, not status symbols. They buy boring things that print money. They stay invisible while their wealth compounds. But Carlos wasn't done. The second rule of the wealth transfer system was even more powerful minus and more controversial. Your financial advisor, Carlos said, how much money has he made you? Marcus thought about it. His 401k had grown. Sure, but after fees and market volatility, the real return was maybe 4% annually. Now, Carlos continued, how much have you paid him in fees over the years? Marcus had never calculated it. Carlos helped him do the math. Between the advisor's 1% annual fee, fund expense ratios, and transaction costs, Marcus had paid approximately $18,000 over 8 years. So you paid $18,000 to make maybe 20 minus $5,000 in gains. But here's what your advisor didn't tell you minus, he made that $18,000 whether your account went up or down. You took all the risk, he got guaranteed income. Who's really building wealth in that relationship? Pause the video right now and ask yourself minus, how much have you paid in fees to financial professionals who get paid regardless of your results? The number might shock you. This is when Carlos revealed the third rule, the one that would change Marcus's life forever. But to understand it, you need to know what happened next in that diner. Marcus's phone rang. His ex-wife. He almost didn't answer, but Carlos nodded at him to take him. What Marcus heard made his situation even more desperate. Asema needed to follow Midas up procedure. Another $7,000, due in 2 weeks. I can't, Marcus whispered into the phone. I don't have it. The shame in his voice was devastating. Here was a man who'd worked hard his entire life, followed all the rules, and still couldn't afford to take care of his sick daughter. Carlos waited until Marcus hung up. Then he said something that sounds crazy, but proved to be the key to everything. You're trying to solve a velocity problem with a volume solution. Marcus didn't understand. Carlos explained, you think you need more money minus that's volume. But what you really need is faster money minus that's velocity. The wealthy don't focus on how much money they have. They focus on how fast it moves. To demonstrate, Carlos pulled out a $100 bill. Watch this, he said. This $100, sitting in my wallet, is worth exactly $100. But if I can move it through the right system, it becomes more. Carlos then explained something that blew Marcus's mind. He showed how wealthy people use the same dollar multiple times, creating what he called velocity loops. Example, Carlos said. I buy a distressed item for $100, sell it for $200. Take that $200, buy 2 items, sell for $400. In 1 week, that original $100 has created $300 in profit. That's velocity. But it was the 4th rule that really shook Marcus's understanding of money. Carlos called it the invisible hand principle, and it explained why some people seem to attract money while others repel it. Money has patterns, Carlos explained. Like water finding its level. It flows toward certain behaviors and away from others. The wealthy understand these patterns. Everyone else fights against them. Carlos drew 2 columns on a napkin. On one side, he wrote money-repelling behaviors. On the other, money-attracting behaviors. What he wrote next challenged everything Marcus believed. Under money-repelling, saving in traditional bank accounts. Paying off low minus interest debt early. Avoiding all risk. Following conventional financial advice. Being visible about money goals. Under money attracting, creating velocity loops. Using strategic debt. Taking calculated risks. Questioning conventional wisdom. Staying invisible while building. But everyone says to pay off debt and save money, Marcus protested. Everyone is broke, Carlos replied simply. Look around this diner. How many millionaires do you see? The advice that everyone follows is designed to keep everyone exactly where they are. I know what you're thinking, minus. This goes against everything you've been taught. But Marcus thought the same thing until he saw the proof. Carlos pulled up his phone again, this time showing a loan statement. He owed $340,000 across various properties and investments. Marcus's eyes widened. You're in debt? Marcus asked, confused. But you said you have $800,000 in investments. I have $340,000 in strategic debt at an average of 4.2% interest, Carlos corrected. That debt generates $180,000 in annual income. After paying the debt service, I net over $100,000 per year. The debt is making me rich, not poor. This is where Carlos's past in the mortgage industry became relevant in an unexpected way. He'd seen both sides, minus how debt destroys and how it creates wealth. The difference wasn't the debt itself, but how it was used. Consumer debt is slavery, Carlos explained. Investment debt is leverage. Same tool, opposite outcomes. The wealthy use debt to buy assets. Everyone else uses debt to buy liabilities they think are assets. Marcus felt his worldview cracking. Everything he believed about money, everything he'd been taught, was starting to crumble. But he needed solutions, not philosophy. How do I start? Marcus asked desperately. I'm $300 in the negative. My daughter needs medical care. I can't even make rent. Carlos smiled. That's exactly where I started. Negative balance, desperate situation, no obvious way out. But desperation can be a gift if you use it right. It forces you to see opportunities that comfortable people miss. What Carlos shared next was a step minus by minus step system that sounds too simple to work. But remember, the best wealth minus building strategies often hide in plain sight. First, Carlos said, stop the bleeding. Not by earning more, but by redirecting the flow. Every automatic payment, every subscription, every recurring charge minus, they're all tiny holes draining your bucket. But here's what the wealthy know: you can often pause, defer, or renegotiate almost anything if you know how to ask. Carlos taught Marcus a script he'd learned from cleaning law offices. A specific way to call creditors that often resulted in reduced payments, waived fees, or payment plans. Not begging or explaining hardship, but using specific legal terminology that triggered different response protocols. Second, create your first velocity loop. Tonight. With $0. Marcus laughed bitterly. How do I create anything with $0? You have a truck, Carlos observed. You have knowledge of construction. You have a phone. That's all you need for the invisible asset strategy I'm about to teach you. Before I reveal what Carlos taught Marcus that night, you need to understand something crucial. The strategy wasn't about driving for Uber or doing odd jobs. It was about seeing invisible opportunities in plain sight, opportunities that exist in every city, but remain hidden to those following conventional paths. Carlos called it the gap strategy. In every market, there are gaps between what people need and what's easily available. The wealthy position themselves in these gaps, becoming the bridge that connects supply and demand. Example, Carlos said. You know construction. How many homeowners need small repairs but can't get contractors to return their calls because the jobs are too small? Marcus nodded. It was a constant complaint. Contractors wanted big jobs, not fixing a loose step or patching drywall. There's your gap. But here's the invisible part minus: you don't do the work yourself. You become the connector. You build a list of reliable handymen who need steady work. You build a list of homeowners who need small repairs. You connect them and take a coordination fee. No tools, no labor, just phone calls. Marcus felt skeptical. People would pay for that? I charge homeowners $90 per hour, pay handyman 40 minus 5, keep 40 minus 5. Handle 5 jobs a week, that's over $900. Scale to 20 jobs, that's 30 minus 600. And that's just one velocity loop. But here's where Marcus's story takes another turn. As Carlos laid out the system, Marcus realized something disturbing. This wasn't just about making money. It was about seeing the world completely differently. About recognizing the invisible systems that keep most people trapped. The real secret, Carlos said, leading in, isn't the tactics. It's the mindset shift. Poor people sell their time. Middle-class people sell their skills. Wealthy people sell systems. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Carlos showed Marcus his notebook again. pointing to observations he'd made while cleaning offices. Law firm partners bill $500 per hour, but pay associates $150. They sell the system, not the time. Accounting firm software does 90% of tax returns, but clients pay for the firm's signature. Financial advisor puts clients in same 12 funds, charges 1% forever for initial setup. Every wealthy person is running some version of the same play, Carlos explained. They find a gap, build a system to fill it, then sell access to the system. The system runs whether they're working or sleeping. We're about halfway through Marcus's transformation, and if you're feeling overwhelmed, that's normal. Marcus felt the same way. But what happened over the next 2 weeks proved that anyone can apply these principles, regardless of their starting point. That night, Marcus went home with his head spinning. But he also went home with a plan. Carlos had given him 3 specific actions to take within 20 minutes for hours. Not complicated strategies, just 3 simple steps that would begin reversing his financial flow. Step 1 was the hardest psychologically, but the easiest practically. Marcus had to call every single creditor and use Carlos's script. The script wasn't about hardship or excuses. It was about using specific phrases that triggered different departments and protocols within financial institutions. I'm exploring my options regarding this account and need to understand all available programs before making my next decision. That was the opening line. Not I can't pay or I'm struggling. The language positioned Marcus as someone making strategic choices, not someone begging for help. The results shocked him. His credit card company immediately offered a hardship program that cut his interest rate from 20% to 0 for 6 months. The hospital billing department suddenly discovered a financial assistance program that reduced his bill by 60%. Even his landlord agreed to a 2-week extension without late fees. Within 3 hours of phone calls, Marcus had freed up over $800 in immediate obligations and reduced his total debt by $200. But it was what happened next that really opened his eyes. Step 2 involved what Carlos called invisible inventory. Marcus had to list every skill, connection, and piece of knowledge he possessed, then identify gaps where those assets could create value. Marcus's list seemed ordinary at first. Minus 15 years in construction management. Minus knowledge of building codes and permits. Minus connections with subcontractors. Minus understanding of project scheduling. Minus experience with construction software. But Carlos had taught him to look deeper. Your real assets aren't your skills, Carlos had said. They're the problems those skills can solve for people who have money. That's when Marcus noticed something. His ex-wife's neighbor had mentioned wanting to add a deck to her house, but felt overwhelmed by the process. His daughter's friend's family had been trying to get permits for a garage addition for months. His own brother had hired a contractor who disappeared mid-job. These weren't construction problems. They weren't rust and coordination problems. People with money who needed someone trustworthy to guide them through construction projects. The gap was clear. Homeowners needed an advocate who understood construction but worked for them, not contractors. Before we go further, let me ask you something. What skills do you have that solve problems for people with money? Not jobs you could do, but problems you could solve. The difference between those 2 perspectives is the difference between staying broke and building wealth. Step 3 was about creating what Carlos called the velocity test. Within 20-4 hours, Marcus had to generate income using 0 capital, just to prove the concept worked. Marcus started with 3 phone calls. First to his ex-wife neighbor about the deck project. He offered to review contractor bids, ensure fair pricing, and oversee the project for a flat fee of $500. She agreed immediately, relieved to have someone knowledgeable on her side. Second call went to the family struggling with permits. Marcus offered to handle the entire permit process for $800. They'd already spent months failing to navigate the bureaucracy. They hired him on the spot. Third call was to his brother. Marcus proposed managing the contractor dispute and finding someone to complete the work for a $1,000 fee. His brother, exhausted from the mess, gratefully accepted. In 30 minutes of phone calls, Marcus had generated $2,300 in future income. No tools, no crew, no capital investment. Just positioning himself in the gap between homeowners and the construction industry. But here's what's crucial to understand: this wasn't about Marcus becoming a construction consultant. This was about learning to see gaps everywhere. Once you develop this vision, opportunities become visible in every industry, every market, every interaction. Carlos checked in with Marcus the next day. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like I'm seeing the Matrix," Marcus replied. "Everywhere I look, I see gaps. Problems people will pay to solve. Systems that could be built." "Good," Carlos said. "Now you're ready for the advanced lesson. The one that turns small money into big money. The principle that separates the comfortable from the wealthy." What Carlos shared next goes against every piece of financial advice Marcus had ever received. It's the principle that financial advisors will never tell you because it threatens their entire business model. Traditional investing, Carlos explained, is a volume game. Put money in, wait decades, hope it grows. It's designed for people who already have money. But velocity investing is different. It's about speed, not size. About turns, not time. Carlos showed Marcus a simple example. Traditional approach: invest $1,000 in index funds, earn 7% annually. After 1 year, you have $1,070. After 10 years, maybe $2,000 if you're lucky. Velocity approach: used $1,000 to buy something for $1,000 that you can sell for $1,500. Do that once a month. After 1 year, you've turned $1,000 into $6,000 in profit. After 2 years, the compound effect becomes exponential. Marcus understood the math but struggled with the application. What do you buy and sell? Wrong question, Carlos corrected. The question is, what gaps can you identify where money moves slowly? Every slow minus money situation is a velocity opportunity. Carlos gave examples from his own journey. Minus: buying liquidation, lots, and selling individual items. Minus: purchasing distressed websites and flipping them after basic improvements. Minus: acquiring equipment from closing businesses and renting it to startups. Minus: buying debt portfolios and collecting or reselling. But these all require capital, Marcus protested. They require velocity thinking, Carlos countered. Watch this. He pulled up an app on his phone showing local estate sales. Estate sale tomorrow. Entire workshop of tools being sold. I guarantee there's someone who would pay you a finder's fee to alert them to valuable tools at below minus market prices. You make money with information, not capital. This is when Marcus realized the fourth dimension of wealth building: the one Carlos called the invisible network effect. Poor people network for jobs, Carlos explained. Rich people network for deals. Every person you meet is either a source of deals or a buyer of deals. Once you understand this, every interaction becomes potentially profitable. Marcus started building his network differently. Instead of networking for employment, he networked for opportunities. Every person he met, he asked the questions, what's your biggest challenge right now? And what are you looking for? The results were immediate. A neighbor needed help selling inherited jewelry but didn't trust pawn shops. Marcus connected them with an estate jewelry buyer he'd met at a networking event, earning a $300 referral fee. A contractor friend needed to liquidate excess materials quickly. Marcus found a buyer within his growing network, earning $500 for the phone calls. But it was week 2 when Marcus's transformation truly accelerated. He'd completed his first 3 consulting projects, earning the $2,300 promised. But more importantly, each client referred him to others. The deck project client recommended him to her book club. 6 women, all homeowners, all with construction projects they'd been postponing out of fear or confusion. Here's where Carlos's system revealed its true power. Marcus wasn't just making money. He was building what Carlos called compound trust. Each successful project created trust, which generated referrals, which created more trust. The system was self-minus reinforcing. Money follows trust, Carlos had said. Build trust faster than you spend it, and you'll never be poor again. By the end of week 2, Marcus had 8 active clients and a waiting list. He was charging $1,500 to $3,000 per project, depending on complexity. His income projection for the month was over $12,000 minus more than he'd ever made in a month at his construction job. But here's the critical moment in Marcus's story. The moment that separates those who temporarily escape poverty from those who build lasting wealth. Marcus was making money, but Carlos warned him about the trap waiting ahead. Right now, you're excited, Carlos said during one of their diner meetings. You're making more money than ever. You want to upgrade everything. New car, better apartment, nice clothes. This is where 90% of people fail. They increase their lifestyle to match their income, and the velocity stops. Carlos drew a diagram on a napkin. 2 circles, one labeled income and one labeled lifestyle. In poor people's lives, the circles overlap completely. Every dollar earned gets spent on lifestyle. In wealthy people's lives, the circles barely touch. Most income goes to building more income minus generating systems. The secret isn't making money, Carlos emphasized. It's keeping the velocity going. Every dollar you spend on lifestyle is a dollar that stops moving. Every dollar you reinvest maintains velocity. This is where you need to pause and examine your own financial life. When your income increases, does your lifestyle immediately follow? Or do you maintain your lifestyle and accelerate your wealth minus building velocity? Your answer determines your financial future. Marcus faced this test immediately. His ex-wife noticed his improved situation and suggested he could afford increased child support. His friends wanted to celebrate his success with expensive dinners. His ego wanted to prove he'd made it by upgrading his visible lifestyle. But Carlos had prepared him for this moment. In Visible Wealth, Carlos reminded him, the truly wealthy look broke while building systems that generate wealth forever. The fake wealthy look rich while building nothing. Marcus made a decision that would define his future. Instead of upgrading his lifestyle, he took his earnings and implemented Carlos's system-building protocol. First, he hired a virtual assistant for $400 per month to handle scheduling and basic client communication. This freed up 10 hours per week for higher minus value activities. Second, he created standardized processes for common project types. Permit applications, contractor vetting, project oversight minus all became systemated. What took him days initially now took hours. Third, he began rating others in his method. Not to replace himself, but to multiply himself. For every project he couldn't take, he referred it to someone he trained, taking a 20% referral fee. Within 60 days, Marcus had transformed from desperate and broke to running a profitable consulting system. But more importantly, he'd internalized the principles Carlos taught. He saw the world differently now. Every problem was a potential profit center. Every skill gap was a business opportunity. Every inefficiency was a chance to create value. But the story doesn't end there. Remember Marcus's daughter Emma? The medical bills that started this entire journey? Here's where the emotional heart of this transformation becomes clear. 3 months after that desperate morning in his truck, Marcus sat in the same hospital waiting room. Emma needed one final procedure. But this time, everything was different. Marcus paid the $7,000 bill in full, in cash, without stress or worry. His monthly income from his consulting system was now consistently over $20,000. But it wasn't just about the money. Emma had watched her father transform from defeated to empowered. She'd learned lessons about resilience, creativity, and thinking differently that no school would ever teach. The real wealth transfer wasn't financial minus, it was mental. "Dad," Emma said after her procedure, "I want to learn what you learned. I don't want to ever feel that scared about money again." Marcus smiled, remembering Carlos's words, "The greatest wealth you can build is in your mind. Everything else follows." This brings us to the final principle Carlos taught, the one that ensures wealth becomes permanent rather than temporary. He called it the invisible legacy system. Most people think legacy means leaving money to your kids, Carlos explained during their final meeting. But money without wisdom disappears in one generation. Real legacy is transferring the ability to create wealth, not wealth itself. Carlos showed Marcus his full system for the first time. Beyond the rental properties and investments, Carlos had built something more valuable minus a network of people he taught his principles to. Each person he'd helped became part of an invisible network that shared opportunities, insights, and support. I helped a nurse build a medical billing audit service. She now helps me understand healthcare investments. I taught a teacher to create educational products. He now spots trends in online learning before anyone else. Every person I elevate elevates me in return. This network effect had compounded Carlos's wealth far beyond what any individual could achieve alone. But more importantly, it had created anti-fragility, minus the ability to get stronger from stress rather than weaker. 2008 destroyed me because I was alone, Carlos reflected. If another crisis comes, I now have a network of hundreds who understand these principles. We'll find opportunities in any chaos. Marcus understood. His own network was growing. Clients became referral sources. Trained consultants became business partners. Even competitors became collaborators when he showed them how to work together rather than against each other. 1 year later, Marcus stood in the parking lot where it all began. Same construction site, same truck, but everything else had changed. His consulting firm now employed 12 people. His monthly passive income from systems and referrals exceeded $30,000. His net worth had grown from negative to over $400,000. But the numbers weren't what mattered most. What mattered was the transformation in how he saw the world. Problems were opportunities. Gaps were gold mines. Every person was a potential partner in building something bigger. Carlos had retired as promised, but they still met monthly at the same diner. During one meeting, Marcus asked the question that had haunted him since the beginning: why did you help me? What did you gain? Carlos smiled. Remember when I said money has patterns? One pattern is that it flows toward value creation. By helping you, I created value that returns to me in ways you can't imagine yet. 3 of your clients have invested in my real estate deals. Your success validates my methods, attracting more opportunities. Your network strengthens my network. That's how the wealthy really think. Mine is not, what can I take? But what can I create that creates more? This principle minus value creation over value extraction minus was the final piece of Marcus's transformation. He stopped thinking about making money and started thinking about creating systems that generated value. The money followed automatically. As Marcus reflected on his journey, he identified the key shifts that had changed everything. From volume to velocity minus focusing on how fast money moved rather than how much he had. From visible to invisible minus building wealth quietly while maintaining a modest lifestyle. From employment to systems minus creating income through systems rather than trading time. From isolation to network minus recognizing that wealth is built through connections, not competition. From extraction to creation minus focusing on creating value rather than taking it. These weren't just financial principles. They were a complete worldview shift that affected every area of life. Marcus's relationships improved because he looked for ways to create value for others. His health improved because he had time and resources for self minus care. His confidence soared because he knew he could create income from nothing if needed. But perhaps the most powerful change was in his relationship with his daughters. They watched their father transform from victim to victor, from scared to confident, from broke to abundant. They learned that circumstances don't determine destiny minus mindset and methods do. Emma, now recovered and thriving, started her own small business at 16 using her father's principles. She identified a gap minus students struggling with online learning technology minus and created a peer tutoring service. Within months, she was earning more than most adults, all while maintaining straight A's. You taught me to see opportunities where others see problems, Emma told her father. That's worth more than any inheritance. This is the real secret that 90% of wealthy people hide. Not because they're selfish, but because it's almost impossible to explain to someone still trapped in conventional thinking. Wealth isn't about having money minus, it's about understanding the invisible systems that create and multiply money. The wealthy don't work harder minus, they position themselves better. They don't save more minus, they create velocity loops. They don't avoid debt minus, they use it strategically. They don't chase visible success minus, they build invisible assets. They don't network for jobs minus, they network for opportunities. They don't extract value minus, they create systems that generate value forever. Most importantly, they understand that poverty isn't about lacking money minus, it's about lacking the mental models that attract money. Change the models, change the results. This isn't positive thinking or manifestation. It's understanding the mechanical principles of how money actually flows in the modern economy. As I share Marcus's story with you, I want you to understand something crucial. This transformation is available to anyone, regardless of starting point. Marcus began in a worse position than many minus negative bank balance, mounting debts, family crisis. If he could transform his situation using these principles, so can you. But transformation requires more than knowledge. It requires action. It requires being willing to see the world differently, to question conventional wisdom, to build when others consume, to stay invisible when others seek visibility. The question isn't whether these principles work minus Marcus's story proves they do. The question is whether you're ready to abandon the comfortable lies that keep you poor and embrace the uncomfortable truths that create wealth. Remember, every day you delay is another day of velocity lost. Every dollar spent on lifestyle instead of systems is a dollar that stops working for you. Every opportunity ignored because it seems too small is a potential fortune left unclaimed. Marcus's journey began with a crisis that forced him to change. But you don't need to wait for crisis. You can begin your transformation today, right now, with whatever resources you have minus, even if that's nothing but knowledge and determination. The gaps are everywhere. The opportunities are infinite. The systems are waiting to be built. The only question is, will you remain part of the 90% who never understand these principles, or will you join the 10% who use them to build extraordinary lives? Carlos's notebook still exists. Marcus has it now, adding his own observations, his own insights. One day, he'll pass it to someone else who's sitting in their car, desperate and afraid, ready to learn what the invisible wealthy have always known. Until then, he continues building, teaching, and creating value. Not because he needs more money minus he has more than enough, but because once you understand these principles, creating wealth becomes as natural as breathing. You can't help but see opportunities. You can't stop building systems. You can't resist helping others transform as you've transformed. This is the real secret the wealthy hide minus, not out of greed but out of necessity. Because explaining velocity to someone thinking in volume, or invisible assets to someone chasing visibility, or value creation to someone focused on extraction, is like explaining color to someone who's never seen. They have to experience the shift themselves to truly understand. Marcus experienced it. Carlos facilitated it. Emma inherited it. And now, through their story, you've been exposed to it. What you do with this exposure determines everything that follows. The wealthy 10% are waiting. Not in exclusive clubs or gated communities, but in plain sight, building invisible empires while everyone else chases visible symbols. They're the janitors who own real estate empires, the teachers who run online businesses, the mechanics who built investment portfolios that dwarf their customers' net worth. They're invisible because visibility is expensive. It attracts taxes, lawsuits, jealousy, and obligations. But invisibility is profitable. It allows compound growth without interference, system building without scrutiny, wealth accumulation without target placement. So as you finish Marcus's story, you face the same choice he faced in that diner with Carlos. You can dismiss these principles as too different from conventional wisdom. You can return to the comfortable patterns that keep you exactly where you are. You can continue playing the game by rules designed to ensure you lose. Or you can begin your own transformation. Start seeing gaps instead of problems. Build systems instead of seeking jobs. Create velocity instead of accumulating volume. Stay invisible while growing wealthy. Network for opportunities instead of employment. Create value instead of extracting it. The choice is yours. But remember minus while you're deciding, the invisible wealthy are building. While you're doubting, they're implementing. While you're waiting for the perfect moment, they're using this imperfect moment to create perfect systems. Marcus's story isn't unique. Thousands of people have discovered these principles and transformed their lives. The only unique element will be your story minus whether it's one of transformation or one of regret. The gaps are waiting. The velocity is available. The systems are ready to be built. The only missing element is you. What will your story be? Thank you so much for watching Marcus's incredible journey with me today. I know your time is valuable, and the fact that you spent it here learning about financial transformation means the world to me. Marcus's story proves that financial transformation is possible, but every person's journey is unique. I want to hear about why your situation minus. What's the biggest financial challenge you're facing right now? Drop a comment below and let me know. I read every single comment and I'll personally respond to as many as I can. And if Marcus's story inspired you to take action in your own financial life, make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. We share real stories from real people about their money journeys every week, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Your financial transformation starts with a single decision. What will yours be? Remember, Marcus's journey might look different from yours. This content is for educational purposes only. Please do your own research and consider speaking with a financial advisor who understands your specific situation. All investments carry risk, including potential loss of principal. Never invest money you can't afford to lose. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Your situation is unique to you, and what worked for Marcus might require different approaches in your circumstances.